Hello and welcome to Techbridge. Our focus today is on technology-enabled infrastructure development in Lagos.
Can look at it in different ways, right? But infrastructure, as we know, right, is basically the foundation for production, as it were. It's like having land that you use for either farming or for building your properties, right? Infrastructure in economic terms is much more than that, right? Infrastructure in economic terms means the goods or services or what has been set in place to enable businesses and citizens, to be able to have their enterprise, as it were. For instance, your road infrastructure, which everybody uses, right? And people use it to have massive gains, right? There are people that use it to transport goods from the north to the west, foodstuff, and people use it to transport imported goods that come into our ports, in Lagos and transport it down to the north, as the case may be. So likewise, right? Light could also be an infrastructure because it is not basically consumed, but it is used, for business, as it were, either on a personal basis or at the corporate level, right? So bringing it down, tech-enabled infrastructure development will be speaking to how technology has enabled the expansion or the development of this infrastructure for increased economic activity, as it were. There are lots of infrastructure that need technology enablement. We have our power generation, we have road construction. Those are the popular ones. But in the digital space, there are quite a lot more. We need data centers in the likes of what AWS offers, the likes of what Microsoft offers with Azure, right? It's, a lot of these infrastructures are needed so that small businesses that are not able to leverage these big techs, right? Because dollar is a thing now, right? So if the government uses tech-enabled infrastructure in the area of data centers and automations, right, small businesses can be able to leverage those capacities, and deliver value locally, and then from there we can start building our competencies that can be exported, you know.
So based
The topic of infrastructure is a tough one, right? Is a tough one because the investments don't come with immediate dividends, and they are quite capital intensive. Okay, for instance, the much conversed road infrastructure between Lagos and Calabar, right? It's a long-term project, but the dividends are quite massive, to all the states that are along that ply along that road, that route, as the case may be, right? So in digital infrastructure, we are speaking to data centers, telecoms, quite a lot has happened, right, on the individual space from the perspective of entrepreneurs coming into that space. We have the Globacom, as the case may be. Of course, there are international companies that have also, multinational companies that have also come and invested, right? Basically on a profit-based level, But when government gets involved, it no longer becomes on a profit-based level, but from a long-term approach, knowing that it will empower the citizens at almost no cost, and they're able to create value, And we all know that money is basically a store of value, right? And so where citizens are able to create value from infrastructure that has been offered at almost no cost to them, right? They are able to build their businesses to the level where they can then begin to contribute to the tax, bucket, which the government can then use, for further development, as the case may be. Right. Quite a lot is happening in the space of digital infrastructure, but mostly from the private sector. We would like to see more from the public sector. A lot of engagements are ongoing. I'm aware of quite a lot of them, and I really have to give kudos to some people in the government who seem to be aware of what needs to be done. But like they say, human wants are massive, but the resources to meet them are always scarce. Just first start because I don't know if the users would really appreciate what investment banking is about, but in simple terms, right? Investment banking is about brokering brokering the availability of funds to companies that want to raise funds to expand their enterprise or for special projects, and then rewarding those that will be providing these funds, right? That's what investment banking basically does. A good use case is the recent recapitalization of banks. You see a lot of moves in the market now. The big boys are out looking for funds, as the case may be, right? And they are looking to raising, at least 500 billion per entity, as the case may be, close to 500 billion per entity. And this is massive. The whole idea is so that the banks would have the capacity to fund projects that are locally based. You can imagine the Dangote refinery, for instance, the funds that would have come for it would definitely not have been funded by Nigerian banks because the capital required is so much. It will require a syndicate of banks. And even at that, I'm sure quite a number would have come either from federal government or from outside the country, as the case may be. So banks are trying to raise their capital base so that they are able to fund bigger projects that can have more impact, in our economy. So bringing it down to the question you've asked, right? It all boils down to improving the capacity of Nigerians to do two things. One, the capacity to be involved in projects that increase our economic activity, as the case may be. So we want to see more Dangotes or more Dangote-like projects, and then we also want to see Nigerians and institutions that are able to fund this kind of projects. Okay. We spoke about digital infrastructure earlier on, and I said that they are also quite capital intensive, right? And part of the reasons why you would not see Nigerians easily play in that space, which requires a long-term, you are looking at a long-term gain for a big uptake like that. So in such scenarios, you also want to see that Nigerians are able to raise required capital to do such internally. I think in that space, I think Nigeria is doing very well, right? The legacy companies and institutions, they've tried, they've done so well in silos, right? And then we are seeing a lot of them taking the backseat now, especially those that have refused to collaborate, as it were. But with the rise of fintechs, quite a number of them that are doing great things, right? 90% of them are not able to achieve what they achieved without collaboration. Okay. All right, there's this thing called co-creation in the technology world now. The whole idea is about partnership, where you bring together your strengths to deliver new products that can bring value, to the community. Right? Take for instance, I think about last year, January, towards the election period, where the cashless policy was a thing, right? And then we had issues around transfers being slow, hanging, and things like that. And quite a few organizations stood out for speed of transactions and all that. They didn't stand out because they did it by themselves. They actually stood out because they were the better collaborators. Okay, and as a backdrop of that, right, a lot of the other banks and other players within the payment industry have decided to move along with the collaboration model.
Okay.
And that has greatly improved success rates in payments and transfers across the industry. So that's just a use case. There are lots of other use cases, that are out there. I made mention of the recapitalization. If you look at any recapitalization activity, you see at least a play of about four industries: securities, assets, capital, and banks. And that tells you that for some of these things to be put in place, quite a lot of collaboration is needed, right? Just like our families, there's only a lot one person can do, right? The maximum hands you have is two, right? But when you collaborate, you can multiply that two by X, depending on the number of people you're able to collaborate with, and that goes with your strengths as well.
Right. So
Yeah.
how do
I try to keep solutions very simple. Like we say in economic terms, right? Production is not really complete until it gets into the hands of the users,
Right.
until they start using it, right? The best of products will always be at the mercy of the consumers. Okay, so likewise, right? Whatever great innovations have been brought out by our industry or in other industries, right? The best way to measure, really, you have to start from the perspective of the consumer, of the customer, right? We have gone from business-driven models to customer-driven models. Okay, so what that means is that first of all, you should be asking yourself, can you measure the usability of this project? Can you measure the availability of this solution, right? And then can you measure the usage of this solution? Okay, with those three parameters, you are well and good, because those three parameters are customer centric. First of all, you are checking that the solution is available, meaning it can be reached, it can be used, it can be approached,
Okay.
it can be engaged, right? Two, you're also measuring the usability, meaning you are checking the customer experience or the consumer's experience
Okay.
while using that service or that technology product.
Right.
Then three, you're also checking the engagement. You're checking how many people are actually using this, how many people code, what's the challenge between the number of people that are currently engaging it and the number of people that have not engaged it,
Okay.
right? So by measuring by having these three metrics, you go a long way to delivering value, to the consumer. Okay, so a lot is going on, right? What we have in our part of the world is innovation usually is faster than regulation, right? I think there should be more conversations like this,
Okay.
more conferences happening where some of these ideas can be exchanged. Government should also try to bring in players from the private sector into the public sector, so that the quality of ideas, quality of engagement, quality of outputs could also begin to merge, as the case may be. And then, like we mentioned earlier, collaboration and co-creation is very key, right? So government-related projects should involve not just single players, should involve multiple players, so that the best of outcomes can be possible.
And that's a wrap on Techbridge today. Join us again next time.